So do you prepare for a storm when you plant your garden? If you're like me, probably not. But that's one thing we probably need to keep in mind, because look here, the last 2.5 days, we have been hammered with storms. Over 10 inches of rain, a lot of wind, we've gotten some damage. Can you do things to minimize damage from those storms? Yes, you can, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Some things that I did deliberately and some things that I did not do deliberately that helped out. Some things that I've learned over the years that will help when those storms come through, because it's not if, but when those storms come through. All right, so corn's probably the biggest thing that gets damaged from those thunderstorms that roll in the summertime with those strong winds. It'll come in there and it'll push your corn around. It'll lay it down sometimes. That's the reason it's important when your corn is small, about this high, to hill it well. It helps support those stalks so that they don't blow over quite as easy. And if you look here, you can tell the storm that they got a hold of mine and pushed it down. It just happens. Some years it's worse than other years. Thankfully, I was harvesting my corn and had most of it harvested when this storm come through. Now, I would call this not real bad damage right here, because when the sun comes back out, it will draw a lot of this back up. Over all my years of gardening, I've only had one corn crop that I lost to being laid completely down, and it was laid down flat from a hurricane about 5 or 6 years ago. But 99% of the time, this corn will stand back up and you can salvage it. But it is important to hill it, give that stalk as much support as possible to help combat those strong storms, winds when they come through. Now here's one of the most important lessons I learned this year. And I did this kind of by mistake, it wasn't planned out. But when I plant things like tomatoes, and our tomatoes have these dense foliage right here so they catch a lot of wind, plant them in straight line of the way your winds normally come in. Now here where I live, 90% of the time, all of our strong winds, our storms come from the west to the east, just about always. So if I plant this in a straight line, the way those winds normally come in, then I won't get that side wind against them, and they stand up a lot better. Having a good trellis system there and trellising them well. I got this Florida weave here that I got several strings on there, but the wind didn't hit it sideways, it hit it straight on, so I had very little damage on this tomato crop right here. All right, just to continue on that same point, this is another crop of hosstools that I had planted, but I planted these in a different direction. I planted these directly against the wind here so that the wind come in here and caught them, all the side of them. Another thing too, I was using wooden posts in here. I had bought these wooden stakes because I was going to show people how you could use different materials to stake your tomatoes. Well, what happened was it blew some of these stakes over when this wind hit those tomatoes and broke them over. So I had to come out here right after the storm and take these metal fence posts and prop it back up as much as I could and drive them in there and try to save them. But I've realized these wooden posts here are not substantial enough to hold these vines up under a storm. A lot of the farmers around here use them, and I was excited to show y'all how you could use something besides metal fence post for your tomato system. But you know what? It was a mistake, because they did not hold up when that storm came through and hit them hard. Now those other 2 rows I showed you were determinate types, where the vines or the bush don't get as tall. These indeterminate varieties right here get a lot taller, and we didn't have very much damage here, and I contribute that to the fact that we used good 6.5 foot metal fence posts. We had that Florida weave going on that was holding them in place, and that row of hosstools over there kind of acted as a windbreak and took some of the pressure off before that straight line wind got to this row of indeterminates. Indeterminates are a lot taller, there's a lot more for the wind to catch, but we fared pretty good on this row right here because we had better post, probably a little better trellis system there than we did on that row of hosstools. Even though, in hindsight, I didn't plant them in the right direction. I should have planted them in this direction so that wind came in this way instead of on the side. We're still able to salvage this row of tomatoes. And my tobacco took a beating too. I'm even amazed that it survived any whatsoever. Got blown over there. You know, it'll straighten up some a little bit, I guess, but after that major storm we have, to be honest with you, I'm just amazed that it's even here whatsoever. Even if I would have planted it in a different direction, I'm not sure it made much difference. When planting a garden or a garden spot in your yard, make sure you never put it in the lowest place that you have where it's going to hold water. Normally speaking, you want your vegetable garden on the highest, most well-drained part of your land, so that when we get these 10 inches of rain, it will drain off and your plants don't sit in water and drown out. Now my garden is on a high spot, it drains really well, so I plant on what we call the flat. I lay off my garden and I just plant on the flat, and I'll come back and cultivate. I will throw soil to my plants a lot of times. But if your garden is in an area that does not drain well or holds water, you may want to think about planting on a small raised bed or a bigger raised bed so it can drain more. When we get these big rains, it makes a big difference if those plants are not sitting in water. And if your garden is not well drained like mine is, think about planting on a raised bed, and that'll help you a lot. So if you've gotten a big rain like we did, 10 inches in 2.5 days with no sunshine, you're going to see some damage. Hey, it just happens. See that tomato right there? It's just split. We're going to see all of our produce or vegetables in our garden are not going to be as sweet because they're full of water. The plants have took up most of that rainwater, shot it to the fruit. Our tomatoes are not as good. Our watermelons are not as sweet. It's just going to happen for the next few days till things kind of level out. And you're going to see a lot of splitting and blowing up. That tomato right there is split. We're going to see watermarks on our tomatoes right there where the fruit cannot handle that much moisture at one time and it just splits. So we're not going to get shelf life out of stuff for the next few days. What we need is some sunshine to come in here and dry things out and level out a little bit, and then we can kind of get back to normal. But the fact of the matter is, we can't go out there and pick a lot of fruit right now and expect it to last for a long time, because the storage of these fruits and vegetables after these big rains, well, it's not going to be what it normally is. They're not going to last, and they're not going to taste as good. And stay out of that garden when it's real wet and muddy. See how soft it is right there? You really ain't going to do any good about getting out there in the garden and causing a mess and mudding up right there. As you can see right here, Mama Hoss got out here yesterday afternoon trying to scavenge tomatoes, and she walked slap out of her shoes right there. She had to throw them over to the side and let them dry out. So getting out there playing in that mud is not doing your garden any good. You know, these yellow dog watermelons are normally really sweet. I ate a couple earlier in the week and I was, man, these things are good. But with this much rain and that much water uptake, what we're going to find is our watermelons just don't last, and they're not going to be quite as sweet. We tend to have a lot sweeter watermelon on a dry year. Even my sunflowers took a hit. They got blood over there, no taller than what they were. Now the sun's starting to draw them back up, so I think they're going to be all right. So if you're gardening, you're going to have a storm every now and then that comes in and causes some damage. It's just part of life. Don't get discouraged. You may need to replant, grow you another crop, or maybe we'll have the sun come out and we can salvage some of this. But you know what old man told me one time? If it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.